This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Kisstopher Musick, PhD, and we're going to talk about changing your life through authenticity. And I want to welcome you to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight or today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. I'm in Melbourne right now, the
So is it
wonderful
nighttime?
city.
Is it nighttime or daytime?
It's nighttime. I guess it's pre-morning, right? It's like the witching hours, 12:30
Okay,
in the morning here. So
alrighty. So that's great. Like I lived in Japan at one time, so I understand.
I live in
Like,
Japan now.
oh, you do? Cool. Like
Yeah. What part of Japan do you live in?
I lived in Moto Azabu near Roppongi
Okay.
in
I
Tokyo.
live in Nagoya.
Yeah, in Tokyo. It's like a district in Tokyo,
Yeah.
so it's near Roppongi. Everybody knows Roppongi. I was in this place called Moto Azabu, which is like part of Roppongi. Really, it's in that area. My daughter,
Nice.
my daughter went to the Nishimachi, um,
Nice.
and I was working for an insurance company. I'm an IT guy in my day job, but yeah, it's a whole different world. But thank you again for being on the show. We love to talk to people from around the world. That's been our thing since 2016. And one of the things we always ask any guest before we start deep into the conversation is what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
So I'm a therapist, and I believe that therapists can help people have more good days than bad. Warms my heart every time I hear somebody has a therapist. I'm a therapist, and I have a therapist. I always tell my clients, if your therapist doesn't have a therapist, get a different therapist. So I think having more good days than bad is tough, and that sometimes you just need a little bit of help, and it can make all the difference. And I hope that I can be that difference in people's lives.
Well, I think it's important to have that kind of, and I'm a big fan of Victorian poets, and they came up with the idea of the looking glass self, which is like self-examination, and then you're gonna want to talk to people about that, by putting it into their poetry, they kind of put it into the world. But the idea is like if you do that analysis, then you want to probably talk to somebody about it too. Um, and it's just I think it's important to understand like all the aspects of a person and the kind of problems that we put on ourselves with like walls and ceilings and limitations so limiting beliefs are like a big thing that we talk about on
Yeah.
the show. But
Yeah.
how do you live more authentically? I've tried to, make authentic conversation of like a part of this show by doing it live, which
Well,
some people find hard to do.
I
I
think
actually get people that don't want to
yeah.
do the show because we're live.
Well, like we were talking about you being a musician, right? And I think you can feel the difference when somebody's telling the truth in what they do. It just causes a deeper connection, right? So when you're playing music and it's coming from an authentic place, the harmonies are richer, the vocals are more moving and more touching. And so being your authentic self, my practice, my approach is compassion focused therapy. And the number one goal in compassion focused therapy is to get rid of shame
Mm,
because it's a useless emotion when we study it. It doesn't do anything. I know it's hard baked into a lot of societies, but it doesn't actually serve any purpose. Shame and guilt don't actually change human behavior. And we find that when people know what they
yeah,
truly value and are honest with themselves, then they can decide how much they want to deviate from that authenticity. So if you're always moving in a way that's true to you, then you're going to have more good days than bad. You're going to have less depression. You're going to be less anxious because you're going to know what you're about. And you can decide to go outside of yourself, right? Be adventurous, try something different, but knowing who you are and knowing when you're overextending, when you're underextending, that really the key to reducing anxiety and having confidence and really loving and liking who you are because you're not constantly having that disconnect. Hope that makes sense.
well, it makes a lot of sense. I think in terms of authenticity, what I find with creative people, what we try to go for, a lot of people I've been talking to over the years is like vulnerability
Yeah.
and the idea that it doesn't have to be perfect to be good. That a
Yes.
lot of musicians, sometimes we get in the trap of, like, we'll be in a studio and we'll do a take like 100 times. and you're like, "Well, what are you doing?
Yes.
What are you doing?" Like, you're in there, like, 8 hours on the same song, and then you start
Yeah.
saying, there's diminishing returns because as a producer, I always go back to people and say, "You know what? The when you start to do that, you're kinda destroying your work."
Yeah.
Because, like, the first 3, 4 takes are closer to your original intention, and the
Yeah.
rest of them are trying to either you're scared of what you did or you're getting obsessive and you're wrecking it.
Yeah.
And I tell Sage, like, let it go and walk away. Let's go do something else.
Yeah.
Let's do another song. Let's walk out, go get a coffee, go walk in the woods or do something else. Because you kind of have to stop yourself, from
Yeah.
doing it.
And I tell people, don't get hung up on what it should be. Look at what it is. There is beauty in our imperfections. That's where our uniqueness lies. Perfect is one thing. It's just flat. There's no curves, there's no edges, there's no intricacies, there's nothing to catch our eye or really lock into. And if we were all perfect, it would be a total homogeneous world. And how boring would that be? Right? Because like a little offbeat or a little moment in music can make it stand out from what everybody else is doing because you are your own secret sauce,
Yeah,
right? You are
yeah,
your
it
own
is.
magic. And so I
That
tell
that's
people,
yeah.
all the time.
Well, that
Yeah,
is
so
super critical.
you're your awesome sauce, right? That's why you're out here in these streets moving the way that you do because you get it, right? You know that you're that spark, that you're the magic. And that's what being authentic is. It's embracing your awesomeness, standing in your excellence and being like, I did that and I can do that, whatever your intentions are.
But some people get scared or they say, well, you're being too ostentatious or you're self-obsessed or you think you're like the best. It's like, like people look at like Muhammad Ali
Yeah,
and he was always like,
yeah,
had that power. But a lot of people looked up to that because, black people had been put down for so long that to
yeah,
see a guy that was standing up and say, yeah, I'm beautiful. I'm pretty. Like,
yeah,
because we were told that we weren't. Right. So to have a
yeah.
guy actually like own it and it was like, wow, that's too much. But then it's like you start to get it and you're like, "Well, wow, that's actually cool that you could feel that way." And maybe it's a little ostentatious, but it's like that's him. That's who he is. Right? That's what he was doing. It's like, everybody's different.
So I tell people that when we study it, right, the most attractive thing anyone can be is confident. And a lot of people are surprised by that. And I think there's a difference between confidence and cockiness. And you look at someone like Muhammad Ali, he's a truth teller. He was telling the truth. He was beautiful and he was amazing at what he did. And he also, I find it interesting listening to his children talk about him now. And they say, he never stepped into the ring thinking he was going to lose. And so when you step in the ring, bet on you. And I
Yeah.
tell people that's the biggest and best bet you can make is betting on yourself. So if you're living your authentic life and you're saying, you know what, I want to do this thing, I'm passionate about it. If you look at something like music, right? You say, I want to be a musician, pick up an instrument and play.
Hmm.
Pick up an instrument and play. Beat on the drum. Sing like nobody's listening. Be your own joy maker and focus on what's going to make you happy. It makes you more productive. It makes you funner to be around. It makes you more interesting to talk to. Being authentic and believing in yourself, it's all good. It's all good. And I tell people, I promise, like when they're first making that step into being like, oh, I'm going to be conceited. I don't want to be the MC. I don't want to have the main character syndrome. And I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
If you're not the main story in your if you're not the main character in your story, who is? And why isn't it you?
Yeah.
So I would don't be afraid of who you are. Love who you are and what's meant for you will come to you and what's not meant to you won't come to you. But if you're being your authentic self, then what's authentically meant for you is going to be there. And when you see opportunities that you're drawn to, go for them. Do the scary thing every now and then because if you know who you are, when you're in those scary moments, you know you have yourself. You know you've got this, that you can do it. And I look at people like when they're out there and they're putting themselves out there, like a musician who puts themselves on stage, or someone who goes for a job interview that is a step up from their last job. And those are the moments that people are their most beautiful to me. And I know I sound like a therapist, and I tell people, just because I'm saying something positive doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it hard today with some, a lot of people are running into, roadblocks with some of the
Yeah,
technologies because we got these technologies, I'm in tech, that I think
yeah,
are reducing human interaction. And
mm,
everybody, like, is getting into AI, but there are algorithms, like, for job searches that
yeah,
are looking for such, like, specific capabilities. They're, like,
yeah,
weeding people out before they even get to talk to a human being. And I think that's a
yeah,
big, like, mistake, and I've been talking to a lot of, like, HR people, and they're like, "Yeah, some of these systems are just, like, totally stopping me from being able to even get to the candidate,"
yeah,
because they're just so specific, and, like, every human being has the ability to learn, right? And you
yeah,
got these companies that want people, like, if for example, like AI. AI is a brand new technology. Who's gonna know everything about AI today, right?
yeah,
They say, and then you get a job description that says, "Have, like, 4 years of AI experience." Well, who's gonna have that right now? Except
right?
for the guys who are at OpenAI or ChatGPT is like, yeah, they would have it, but maybe it would be smart to have your actuary who knows actuary science learn AI, but you only want somebody who knows AI, well, he doesn't know it, but he has, like, a business knowledge that he could learn it and then apply it to that profession, and there seems to be people with, like, they got a disconnect between, like,
Yeah,
you could learn that. That person could actually do that, but you're not even giving them the chance.
yeah. So that's interesting. So my husband is a chief data officer, and it's something that we talk about all the time, and something that I kind of my husband's jobs knows that I'm all up in the business, and something I talk to him about is always, when you're putting a job together for a candidate, look at your screening tools and ask, what is this screening tool producing? If you put a job search out, right, and you're not getting the candidates you want, it's not the job market, it's your screening tools. And you have to look at, what do I actually want this person to do when they're at the company? Do I want them to have growth potential? Am I trying to grow and develop talent, or am I looking for developed talent? And then do your own research. Get out there, look at what other companies are doing, and be smart about it. Because I think that that is part of being authentic, right? Is saying, hey, I know what I like, I know what I don't like. This AI does not know me better than I know myself. When I look at something that's written by ChatGPT, there's a feel for it. And people are using ChatGPT to write their resumes. And I love AI. I love technology. I think it's a beautiful thing, but it's not a human. So
Yeah,
I write a blog. My blog is very formulaic, but it's my formula, because I want people, when they read my blog that's on my
that's
website,
beautiful.
Adjustment Guidance, which is the name of my therapy practice. When they read the blog, I want them to be like, okay, this is Christopher's voice. And when they come and see me as a client, I want them to be like, you know what? This sounds a lot like what I was reading in your blog, because they shouldn't be coming to me for an AI. When I look at AI art, and when I look at AI acting, which is, they're getting into that now, there's something that's missing, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
and
My
there
daughter's,
is
like,
a
a graphic
humanity
artist. My daughter's a graphic
lost.
artist, and she
Yeah,
rails on it because a lot of people in her community who are graphic artists are getting replaced by this, like, AI art, and it can look
yeah,
to somebody who's not really an artist or a real fan of art
yeah,
history, it can look like it's art. It doesn't look like it's not art, but it's
right,
missing the human element. It's missing the imperfections, like I said, like the happy accents, like
yeah,
if you think about, like, I look, my daughter is, like, really into painting and sequential graphic art, and it's hand done with pencils and pastels, and there's something about the human capability of every artist. They have their own style, but the AI
yeah,
actually, what it does is it takes styles that already exist and
yeah,
approximates them or appropriates them without citing them,
yeah,
which ticks off a lot of artists because they're like, it's using my work and it's not citing it, which is pretty much
yeah.
plagiarism. And you were like, that's not cool.
It's not cool. I own a publishing company, called Cinnabar Moth Publishing, and I use an actual human to make all of our covers. And the cover process using an actual human is that they ask you, "What's your book about?" And they ask you, "Who's the" and we do the book cover, and then we do, like, 2 MCs, and I can tell because 'cause I'm in the publishing industry, I can tell those books that have the pre-made covers that have the AI art. It's missing it's a certain, like, feel. It's just a je ne
Yeah,
sais quoi that it's missing, and our, authors are so much happier with the process. They're so much happier talking to a real artist, and you can make these little subtle changes that are really easy to make that only a human would understand, right? I
yeah,
want her to have like, this character needs to have a little sparkle, or this character, like, what's their mood? What's their vibe? What's their energy? If you have a character on the cover versus if you're making a choice to not have a character on the cover, what does this mean to the author? And I find that with the working with the AI art tools, they don't really ask that
no.
emotional content. I guess, I'm a therapist, so yeah, I'm always like, "What's the
Yeah,
emotional
what's
content?"
emotional? Well,
Yeah,
art
and
is all about emotion. I mean, a lot like in
yeah,
music, we see it too, because people will use AI to try to make songs, and not that it can't do it. It'll go and do it. If you tell it to sound like James Brown or sound like
yeah,
Prince, it'll find something. But the thing is like it's the secret sauce. It's like it's that like you can have somebody that likes James Brown, but when they approach it, they don't actually hit
yeah,
it note for note like James Brown. They actually approach it based on who they are. And that's why
yeah.
in the blues, like the blues has a certain format, right?
Yes,
But
it
when
does.
Hendrix does Red House versus when Stevie Ray Vaughan does Red House or
Yes.
Albert King does it, it's the same song, but it's done differently by each guy. Each
Yeah,
guy is doing it from based on where their soul is and where their heart is, and it's like in that zone, but it's not the same song.
yeah,
And sometimes people don't
yes.
don't get that.
So, I like listening to, like, old old rock, right? And I was interested in they had a show on for a while that was like, is it AI or is it the actual artist? And I was like, I wonder if these people that are doing this, they're designing the AI, right? The people who are writing the code. I wonder if they've been to a live music show because it's just like, back in the day, I'm in my 50s and there used to be this old commercial, is it live or is it Memorex?
Yeah, yeah,
And for me, just the differences, the choices that an artist makes, right? The conversation that the artist has with the audience when they take their break, the slight little differences from show to show.
yeah.
If you follow someone on tour or you go to a live music venue and just sit and be with that. And I'm a huge fan of Afrobeats and I'm so spoiled
Mhm.
that Afrobeats have come to Japan. And so there's something going on almost every weekend and it's so lively and it's so fun. And I just really hope that AI stays in the lane, right? Where it can be a really great tool and it can be really helpful. But you see it coming into the mental health field
Yeah,
and you
it's coming
see these
everywhere.
chatbots. Yeah, and there's chatbots now, and I understand that everybody wants to save money, but there are some places where I feel like AI is just not AI's lane, right?
Yeah,
And so
it's
I'm
trying to
really
force it
concerned.
into it's like, put a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah,
And a lot of,
that's exactly it.
and I think, it's like the industry. Like, right, any industry comes in and they wanna automate, they wanna save money,
Yeah,
right? And then you find out there's still a niche for hand-built, human-made things, right?
yes,
It's like I have some, like, synthesizers that are hand-built.
yeah,
And there's something about the hand-built synthesizer versus the mass-produced synthesizer that it actually feels like a acoustic instrument because
yeah,
even if you buy the same brand the next day, that model is a little different in the lane. It
yeah,
is actually in that brand, it's like each one is like unique. And you're like, wow, that just there's a reason why people buy like acoustic instruments that are hand built.
yeah,
They buy because of that, because it gives that the artist like this is going to give me a tone that's not like
yeah,
anybody else's tone, and that's why they do it because you want to have that. But then you have this mass produced kind of thing. The AI things like doing this mass production
Yeah.
which is cool. It allows people to economize, and I understand it. I'm in business, but there's some places where you still have to have a human being make those judgments
Yes.
in terms of like there's morality, there's like just a discernment. There's a
Absolutely
discernment that a
agree.
human being makes that unless you get like sentience inside of
Yeah.
AI and it has some kind of personality, it's not going to have that. And so that's what people need to
But
be
then
warned about.
and two, with everything, I tell people there's like micro intonations, micro inflections, which you're probably really aware of as a musician, right? With the different
Hmm.
instruments, the micro vibrations in the sound. There's slight differences with utterances and
Yeah,
such.
that's all.
There's also micro expressions with the face. So when we're looking at AI, right, or if we're looking at there's a lot of text-based therapy, and I have concern about text-based therapy, and I think it can be good for some people, but a lot of the text-based therapy places, they limit the therapist to how many characters they can respond. And
Yeah.
I just for me, that doesn't feel like the right way to be moving, right? Like
Oh, tokens.
if
It's
you're
limited by like the token capability of AI is like it's a
yeah,
it's mathematical. It uses power. It
yeah,
costs money, so it starts putting limitations. And
yeah,
a human being doesn't have that token limitation, that energy requirement limitation. It doesn't
yeah,
have it, right? To a certain extent, like when because your brain can is doing that without using power, using
yes,
electricity, right? Being limited by token concepts, which these are like
yeah,
limitations of the tech, right? And so it was always, no computer that's ever been built can match the human brain. In IT, I do software
yeah.
design. There's nothing that is as powerful as the human brain. There are people who somehow think the AI is. It's not, right?
It's not.
That right there is you're making a mistake.
I find it really interesting the studies on AI bias, and I found it interesting that an African American woman who was working on the AI project, you might have heard of this, the AI
Mhm.
wasn't recognizing her face, and then for Halloween, she had
Yeah,
put
yeah,
on a white face, and I was like, "Wow, this was so deep to me," because she hadn't. She was designing it. She was the one writing the code.
and she didn't think about it.
And
Yeah,
she hadn't thought about looking at the different things that we have to teach AI. And so also we have to teach AI culture, right? Because
yeah,
if someone being themselves and embracing their culture, embracing who they are, how we say, and my favorite word is an expletive that's, the F word is my favorite word in the human language. I think it's so expressive. It can express like the most rage you've ever felt in your life, but
mhm.
also the most joy you've ever felt in your life. And
Yeah,
I just
context is
wonder,
everything.
like,
Yeah, doesn't get
right?
the
I just
context.
wonder how are
Yeah.
they gonna know that, right? If because if you're looking at the rules of language, cursing, right, is not something that is seen
Oh,
as
yeah, and then they
positive or
build, like,
fun,
safety into it, right? So you build safety into
right?
something, and then it's like, "Okay, well, you're not supposed to say
Yeah,
the N word, but what if you're a hip hop rapper, right? What if
right?
you're De La Soul or Chuck D?" Well, in that context, it's not or NWA, it's actually not wrong for them to say it in the context of what
Right?
they're doing. But if you build a
Because
general
it means brother,
safe
it means
yeah,
family.
yeah, but if you build a safety algorithm, it will say it'll stop people from expressing themselves. And they've seen this on the internet where black people using words
Yeah,
are being actually censored and not allowed to do their
yeah,
post, where then like white supremacists are somehow able to get their stuff through. So
yeah,
there are these implicit cultural biases
yeah,
in the system already, and the learning libraries that these things are being taught on people that are maybe not historians, they're
yeah,
not sociologists, they're not psychologists, they are
yeah.
mathematicians and they are physicists and they are scientists. And the
There's a
science has
really
always
there's
had
a book with that title, right? There's a book with the N word as a title. And I advise everybody to do their research, pick it up and read it, and I found it very interesting when and why, you know, why the community is split on it, why and I think if we educate ourselves, right, and really try to if we're being authentic and we're trying to heart to heart, have an authentic conversation with somebody and really get to know them, I think that that's like a such a even if you don't agree with the person, you can still
Mhm.
connect human to human.
Yeah.
And I think that is so I find Kendrick Lamar to be super fascinating. I just love all the awards and acclimates, and I'm, like, rooting for him. Do I agree with everything that he
No, he
stands for?
he's
No.
actually said things that have kinda, but that's the any human being. Like, every artist has said at some
Yeah,
point in their career something that ticked off their fans, that ticked off the critics, because they're human beings. You can go
yeah,
back and look at, like, Dylan went to a phase where he became a born again Christian, and some of his fans were like, "What?"
yeah,
Prince became a Jehovah, and people said, "What?" It's
yeah,
like people go into phases, and
yeah,
then you're like, "What is going on?" And it's like, well, that's who they are. And so,
yes,
human beings aren't perfect, right? And so the
yeah,
whole idea of like being imperfections are like innate. And then
yeah,
what happens with computers? They know zeros and ones. They know on and off.
yes,
They know yes and no. And then we've
yes.
gotten sophisticated enough to make you think that they know more than that, but they don't. It's like
And even
everything is still basic.
self-learning machines only learn what they're exposed to.
Yeah, it's a very limited, and you
Yeah,
can have hallucinations where, like,
yeah,
if your learning library is only up to 2015, and you ask it about something in 2024, it might tell you something that it pulled out of
yes,
it, but it actually doesn't represent what's going on in 2024, right?
yes,
So it can go and give you false information. It can tell you that to use a rock or
yes.
something. It can
So
go and apply, like, something that doesn't make sense
yeah,
at all. It's like, what is that? It's like, so you gotta be very careful about what it's like garbage in, garbage out is the rule in
yes.
computers. Like, if I put garbage in, it'll give me garbage out.
So something that drives me wild that I just is that I've seen change, right? I have my PhD, super proud of it. And the rule for any research that I used in my research was that it had to be written within the last 5 years, and it had to be like had to do all of these tick boxes. And nowadays, to sound like an old person, I don't care, but back in my day, we couldn't just use Wiki. Wiki's written by lay people. It's not an
It's
expert. It's not an
not
expert
journalism.
opinion. Lots of people put wild stuff on Wiki that is just not true. And now in high school, they're letting people use that to cite in their
Yeah,
papers.
but we see what's
And I
going on
just
in the public today is, like, you
yeah,
got people saying, "I saw it on TV, so it must be true."
okay, okay, people are saying it on TV, don't make it true, don't believe everything you see on TV.
And we have people that are, like, very high level people. And, when I went to
Yeah,
college, I went to Bowdoin, I mean, and you had to cite stuff, right? You write your paper, you gotta prove that it's not plagiarism, that you're
yes,
right? And you got people
yes,
today, it's like, where's that standard? That I can
yes,
take something like, it's coming from the dark web. Somebody
yes,
went and said something from some crazy neo-Nazi group puts out something, and then you say, "Oh," then a regular person finds it and then put it on their Facebook, and then now that's true. Where
yeah.
did it really come from? So they get a journalist that actually tracks it down and they say, "Oh, my constituents are saying it." Like, it's like
So
the level of
I find, like
is
I go down
crazy.
rabbit holes, like, I like 4chan, I like 8chan, I like Reddit, Quora, all of that, right? I find them super interesting, and
Human
how
behavior,
I first
sociology, yeah.
became interested in it is someone who had never met me because I can't confirm or deny anyone's my client, and it's no longer this thing no longer is easily findable, so I can talk about it. Someone who had never met me writ wrote a whole, like, sort of I don't know how to describe it, stuff like a fan fiction about what it was like to be my client,
Oh, wow.
and I was lucky enough that a client of mine saw it, and then other clients started interacting and turned it to be like a whole thing. But they wrote like this whole thing about me that wasn't true. This whole fantasy about me that just wasn't true. And because of my position, I can't confirm or deny, I can't address it, right? I can't
Mhm.
interact with
Oh,
it.
wow, that's bad.
And I've been a therapist long enough that it for over 25 years now, and that wasn't a thing. And the American Psychological Association, when I was first being a therapist, we didn't have the internet in the way we have it now. And as each thing came on, we weren't supposed to ever have a public online presence. And now the APA is having to rewrite everything. And
Yeah.
I'm finding that. AI, unfortunately, I've also been had my face put on people doing things together, that are very explicit that wasn't me.
Mhm.
And how do we fight that, right? How do we prove that, "Hey, this
Yeah,
AI thing is not me. I don't have an OnlyFans. This isn't me. I'm not doing this." And this is just one person I've never met who has never met me, grabbed an image off of me on the internet, which is just not anything special, not anything spicy. Um, I'm happy with who I am as a person. I don't think I would be the go-to for this kind of thing, but having all of it happen and what it takes to prove that I'm a real person and what it takes to prove that that's not me.
yeah,
And
that's
so,
the difficulty is the I've actually taken some courses on AI, and they have, like, ethics courses,
yeah,
right? Is part of, like, AI. If you're gonna get into it, you're supposed to take certain, like, level of ethics, and the problem is
mm,
the people teaching the ethics,
yeah,
right? But I made an argument about it to the course people who did it. It's like, is this somebody outside of AI creating the ethics course? Don't you think
yeah,
you should have an ethicist that's a PhD level person
something.
that's not part of OpenAI, that's not part of Microsoft, that's not part of Google, right? They are a
Yeah,
separate individual person that's an ethicist that's a known, wrote books, wrote
yeah,
papers, wrote, and it wasn't. It was somebody actually working for the company. And I'm like,
yes,
I don't think that's valid as a course, right? And
yeah,
so then you get people like, well, because the problem is in technology, just because we can do it doesn't mean it's right. The problem with the technologists is they will go create capabilities that actually go against existing law, privacy
yeah,
rules, morality, and they say, "Well, great, well,
yes,
look what I was able to do." Well, it's jumping ahead of our controls, and that's it's a big moral issue that we need to deal with in society because what you just talked about, that where's the law to match what's going on, right? There's a lot
yes,
of people like imagine a kid in school that gets hit with that.
yes,
The bullying that can be done to kids today with this tech. They can cause
yes,
people to have suicides. They can cause all kinds of real bad harm. And where's the controls? Where's the rules? Where's the school rule? Where's the college rule about this? Where's the rule at work for a colleague
yes,
at work? Like where's it's not catching up to what the capabilities are. I think it's
yes.
all about human beings. You got to understand that just because somebody can do something doesn't mean that it's right.
That's my thing I'm saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah,
And I feel like with a lot of the AI, right, we're looking for the shortcut and we're not looking for, again, that human connection, being authentic. Sorry, I have to take a sip of water.
yeah, yeah.
And so knowing our value system and thinking about is what we're putting out in the world. Is that how we want to represent ourselves? Is that how we want to impact other people? Do we want to be the good thing in someone's life or do we want to be the hard thing in someone's life? Why are we making the choices that we're making? And the person I actually ended up did meet the person, did connect with them, and I was able to get everything as much as anything can be taken down, all of those things
Wow, that's good.
taken
You
down.
actually
And the person was actually a lovely person who just came across my picture and thought I was beautiful. Okay,
they just thought they could use
right on.
it.
Yeah, thought I was beautiful. Thank you. That's a compliment. I accept it. But look where it went,
Mhm.
right? Because I'm still a person. There's a person behind that image, and it did impact my life. And when I was talking to them, I was really moved by how isolated they were
Mhm.
and how isolated they thought their actions were. They didn't feel like they had a reach. They felt disconnected from the world. They felt lost and they felt alone. And in
Wow.
that loneliness, in that moment of loneliness, they connected with my work and what was out on the internet about me. And so
Yeah.
it like it started from this place of loneliness, right?
It's like
And then it
anomy,
started to,
right? Like in sociological
right?
terms of like anomy. And I think the problem with the
Yeah.
modern tech, it creates these false walls. Like, you're sitting in
Yes.
your room, you go and do something like that, and you're like, "Oh, this is just in this sector of the web, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter because you don't see the impact. If you're out in society, if you're out in a crowd
Yes.
and you go do something, there's gonna be a consequence when people see you do that. But now you have this
Right.
anonymity and you have some self like protection, and maybe you're not thinking it out. You're just like, oh, I'm afflicted with enemy. I'm disconnected. I'm not really socializing well, and so you get a lot of bad habits,
Yeah.
and you go into zones with tons of other people with bad habits, and they
And so
kind of
that's why
encourage each other.
and if you're bringing it back to being authentic, right? If you authentically don't wanna be a bad actor in the world, and this person authentically did not wanna be a bad actor in the world, but this lie, right, that they were this thing they told themselves that they were alone, that they had no one, that they couldn't reach out, that they couldn't connect, none of that was authentic. That was all a false narrative that they had made up, that society is feeding back, that the places that they were going, right, was not making them feel good when they were there, and they were reaching out just trying to feel good. That's all
Mhm.
this person was trying to do, was trying to have a moment of connection and trying to feel good, and I we were able to, like, talk, and I was able to say, "Hey, here's some resources." Online communities can be beautiful thing. I love Discord. I think it's amazing. But like you were saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you're going to places, go to those wicked places, but have also places of happiness, places where people
Yeah.
are trying to do more good than bad. And I like the more this than that dynamic because we're not trying to do perfection, right? More good than bad. Some days I'm in like there was a book I used to read my kid, A Horrible Rotten No Good Day. Some days I want to kick rocks, go bang on the drum, go kick rocks, but then come back to yourself and realize, hey, I don't want to put kicking rocks into the world every day. I want to smile. I
Yeah.
want to be happy. I want to feel joy. And I want to be real and I want to be authentic. And I want to connect with real, authentic people. When you're going on these forums and these places, there are ways to tell if you're talking to a real person. Get out of echo chambers. Talk to people who disagree with you and realize that it's really people are not as far from each other as they think,
Mhm.
because we all just want to not suffer.
Yeah, I think that people are just, there's all this like the age of resentment and the
Yeah,
age of I want to bring it back to what it was. Like the whole idea, like
yeah,
of make America great again. It's like they're looking for some kind of magic period that never existed.
yeah,
If you're
yeah,
a student of history, you look at any time period, it was never great for everybody. It wasn't as great as you actually are
yeah,
saying it is, right? But you want to romanticize things. You want
yeah,
idealized visions. So people have
yeah.
these idealized visions of when certain people didn't have, women couldn't vote, women couldn't be, in jobs, black people
I
couldn't
think
be
it's
in
like
jobs.
this idealized version of perfection for someone, right? Like we were talking about, our it it wasn't perfection. And if you I look at that dominant structures. And for there to be dominance, there has to be submission, right?
Yeah,
Because or else you're not dominating. And is that what you want? Do you
yeah.
want people to be subjugated? And what does subjugation bring? It's a suppressive act to subjugate. You're going to miss out on so much creativity. You're going to miss out on so much joy. And I tell people, I'm a huge history buff. I love history. That's one of my favorite things to do is just research things. And I say, if you trace it back, you can find that most cultures, even before we were joined, because interesting, psychology actually started as linguists, and the linguists who started were actually ethnographers who went around traveling the world, looking at other cultures and talking about the similarities and differences in other cultures.
Mhm.
And there are far more things that are similar than are different, right? We all have family structures. We all have community structures. We all have music. We all have art. We all have food and flavors. And I tell people, if you think that you want homogeneity and that you want one single dominant structure, then I challenge you to eat the same thing for 30 days.
Every day, yeah, you can't
The
do it.
exact same thing for 30 days, right? And then tell me that that's what you wanna do for 365 days. And when I say eat the same thing, I'm saying eat a plain piece of bread with no seasonings,
Yeah,
no nothing. Just pick
nothing on it.
something plain or a piece of fruit that grows local to your area and only eat that. And tell me that's better for you than having, there's 31 flavors for a reason, right?
Yeah,
And 31
yeah.
flavors, right?
Well, I think that what happens is, people get, you know, I don't know, I think a lot of people feel that, like, when somebody I don't know, there's certain people out there today, what I've seen is their idea of freedom is actually
Yeah,
suppressing somebody else's freedom. And the question
yeah,
is what does that have to do with you? If somebody else
exactly.
practices a different religion or speaks a different language, how does that affect you? If somebody has their own medical personal situation, what does that have
Yeah,
to do with you? And why do
yeah,
you feel that your freedom is tied to their action? And then
yes,
and where's the empathy? Like, and switch it around. Would you want somebody to tell you that you can't get a
yeah,
vasectomy? Would you like somebody to tell you that you can't, like, get plastic surgery, that you can't do this, that you can't do that,
can't
you
get a
can't eat this?
tattoo, can't get a
Yeah.
piercing.
But somehow you have a thing saying you want freedom, and then you wanna take freedom away from other people. And it seems to
Yeah.
be like a lack of education, empathy, and, just, like, common sense. 'Cause there's certain things that are just
And I tell
common.
people too, like, if I'm limiting you, I have to watch you. As soon as I'm putting limits on what you can and can't do, I have the vigilance that comes with it. And I tell people
Where's
vigilance
the
is
freedom in that?
exhausting.
Well, where's
Yeah,
the freedom in that? Like, the idea
vigilance is
that
exhausting.
yeah, that you gotta create a whole structure, which you gotta
Yeah,
create a whole agency to monitor this person, but you want the freedom to do whatever you want. If somebody told you,
yeah,
"We're gonna create a monitoring situation for your religion, and if we catch you praying, we're gonna grab you and put you over here."
yeah.
You would say, "Well, I can't. You can't have that." But you wanna
And
go
I
do that to somebody else.
and I tell people too, like, the prison guards, right, that work as a prison guards, they go and they're in prison, even though they're the guards, they're in prison.
They're
And I
stuck in
tell
the
people, like,
system.
yeah, and I tell people, like, when you start, like, monitoring people at that level, you have to really check yourself, like, "Okay, so what about when you were a little kid in school and we all get markers for the first time and we know that markers can write on our skin for the first time?" That was an exciting time in my life, and you go in some of the cutest videos on the internet are kids with marker all over them. Once we start telling people what they can and can't do, it starts to get younger and younger and younger because where does the idea start to do something? So when we look at body art or tattoos or anything else with the human body, we have to look at, okay, now we're going to stop children from being children.
Mhm.
And to me, that is we're gonna miss out on so much because I find creatives, when they learn to create, when they learn that they love to create, more times than not, it's something that happened in early childhood.
Yeah,
And
almost every
if we have a
creative.
free yeah, if we have a free society where we let our kids bang on pots and pans, where we let our kids wear what they wanna wear, when we let our kids express how we wanna express, and we're not afraid of our kids' expression, we're not afraid of our children's authenticity, those are the richest when we study it, those are the richest, happiest societies, most prosperous societies. And if you're looking at, "Hey, I don't have as big of a piece of pie as I want," instead of making the pie smaller, why don't we bake more pies?
Make more
You
yeah,
know, "I
but
don't need your pie."
I mean, they've been looking at, like, a lot of people have false narratives. Like,
Yes.
they think, like, if you look at, the pandemic, and this is, like, real information, like,
Yeah,
if you look at tons of countries and their GDP, and you
yeah,
look at their immigration, like,
yeah.
laws, the US
Yes.
is they got the best GDP out of everybody post-COVID because our immigration policies allow more immigrants into the country, and countries that allow
Yes.
more immigration actually have higher GDP, which shows you
Yes.
economically that the diversity actually isn't hurting the economy, it's helping the economy. But because some people don't look at facts, they hear somebody say something. I heard that on TV. I heard that on a blog. I heard that on the
Yes,
net. And they don't go look at the
yes.
economist. They don't go look for the number because that's too hard to look for the number, right? It's easier to just hear the hearsay. And
And I think too, if a lot of people, and so I'm American, I love America. I think it the promise of America is a beautiful thing. I live in Japan. That makes some people angry. But that's one of the privileges of being American is that I can leave
yeah,
and go live in another
expat,
country. And in
expat. I
Japan
was an
right now,
expat.
right? And in Japan, they changed the visa laws. About I want to say about 8 years ago, they changed the visa laws to be less restrictive, and they're seeing a growth in GDP. They're seeing a growth in the domestic birth rate because there are more opportunities because they started introducing better maternity laws and giving people time off to have babies and then come back to work makes people have more babies. Who'd have thought it, right? And having good childcare in place. And then also, Japan is doing this really cool thing where it's employing elder people who have sort of aged out of doing a 9 to 5 to being school walkers. And a school walker is basically someone who goes picks kids up at school.
Oh, wow, finding
We call
that's
them
cool.
obasans and oji-sans. They just go pick up kids from school and hang out. And so then you get this general knowledge
Well,
being passed
generational
down
knowledge
and all of
transfer, which
this.
is real important,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I
yeah,
think that's
and
where a
so
lot of people, like you're saying, is like a lot of countries that are running into like, issues with their population not actually
yes,
reproducing at a level to actually keep their economy growing, have to
yes,
kind of hit the button of like immigration is not the disaster that everybody wants to think it is because of xenophobia. Like, and a lot of cultures have this xenophobic thing. They just have it because it's kind of ingrained. But you got to look at like there are certain people that actually profit from it.
yes,
If you get into the politics of it, you start studying political science, start studying history,
yeah,
you take economics, political science, and history, and sociology and psychology, you mix them all together, you get the liberal arts. But you get
yes.
some people today are so focused on maybe just the mathematics, maybe just the
But I
software
think
design.
too,
They don't,
a lot of people when they bash immigrants, a lot of people don't know that a lot of the immigration laws don't let people work.
yeah,
Like they actually cannot get like the refugee laws while your case is being reviewed, most countries won't let you work. And a lot of immigration laws, especially in the United States, you're if you're there for work, the company that you work for, you can't switch companies.
no, you're stuck, kind of like
You
slave
can't have
labor.
yeah,
You're kind of
yeah.
stuck. And
And
then
so
if
we're
they could,
saying like these people are drag on the social support network, then let them work.
well,
Let
you're
them
you're
work while
kind
the
of
case is being
pre-designed. I
reviewed.
mean, if you design something to fail, like you designed it
Yes,
to fail, and so you
yes,
have to look at why are you designing it to fail? Why are you
yes,
designing it so these people are really don't have full human rights? So
yes,
you're restricting like their humanity because you
yes,
don't think that they're human, right? You still have a problem. And I think it's the empathy is like I think the society needs to have like a lesson, like to be taught.
yeah,
Like you need to have empathy for your fellow man is number one to stopping war, stopping violence, stopping all these bad things,
yes.
right? But the lack of empathy for your fellow human being is like our worst trait.
Because when they show all these people not working, if you said, "Hey, you can get a job and you can stay in this country and you can prosper," they wanna work. The
Yeah,
narrative that they don't wanna work is a false narrative. They can't work. They're legally bound
yeah,
from working if you're seeking refugee status. And, like, when we look at borders and what borders preserve, and we look at, like, how we define First Nation, Second Nation, and Third Nation, and all of that, and we look at resources and things of that nature, what actually social science tells us is that the more nomadic periods in the world is when we see the biggest growths in dynamics. And I think it would be really interesting if like these people, right, that love AI, if they would look at the countries that are really developing AI. Where did these people come from? Not where did they live? Where
Mhm.
did these people come from? Where were they educated? What is the diversity of thought that is feeding this idea, that is driving technology, that is driving all of the things that they love most in the world? Look at the diversity of thought behind that, and then ask yourself, is diversity of thought a good thing? Because I think that's what's really missing in the world is that people are not listening to each other and they don't want to talk to each other anymore. And, as the kids say, you got to get out and touch grass. I say, no, get out and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Get out from behind the keyboard, get out from behind the screen. I know irony of irony I'm on a screen right now, but listen to people you don't agree with.
Well, I think that having dialogue, man, the whole that way, having a
Yep.
liberal arts education, like I was exposed to people
Yes.
from around the world when I went to school. My roommate was from Japan. Later, I ended up going to Japan because I had experience of
Yes.
living with my roommate from Japan. Right, I was in the international club, knew people from China, from Taiwan, from Egypt, from
Yes.
South Africa. It's like, and so when I was at Bowdoin, it wasn't that diverse, but I found
Yeah.
like all the diverse people on campus. Right? And it's 1,400 kids, and there's like not most of them are not from around the world, but I seem to find all the kids in my zone were from around the world, and I'm like, it was interesting that in that little town in Maine, I'm talking to kids from South Africa, China, and Tokyo, and these other
Yeah.
kids are just talking to somebody from Ohio or New York or Kansas, but they're
Yeah.
not talking to that kid from China. And
And I tell people,
it's a mindset, I
Calif
think.
yeah, and I've been to almost every state in the United States. And I tell people visit other states, and I was surprised by how most of the stereotypes and things I had heard about the state that I was visiting were just not true. Were just
Oh
not
yeah,
true. I met
states are
some of the
diverse.
most
Yeah,
amazing, yeah, I met some of the most amazing and kind people in Montana, and I didn't like have anything to think good or bad about Montana. I was just driving across the country, and I met this lady in the grocery store, and we were got to talking, and then I went horseback riding, and that afternoon, I love horse I have a passion for horses, and we ended up, like, having dinner and getting just so welcoming and so loving, and then I went and we were in Chicago, and next thing I know, we're going on this wonderful lake tour and going seeing all of these sites, and it was just really interesting to me just how welcoming person to person I was in every state that I visit, and it was a thing because we were visiting, we were going back, because 'cause we'd been in Japan for several years, and I wanted to go to spend some time back in the US, and I was surprised driving cross country, drove cross country the north part and cross country in the southern part, and everybody was so welcoming,
yeah.
and
I think it's
everybody
just
was
like you
so
have to.
kind.
That's just being like a world traveler, like Jack Kerouac on the road. It's
Yeah.
like if you get out of your comfort zone and you actually
Yes.
start to, get outside of yourself and outside of the things that you've been kind of told, whatever, these are the norms. And just
Yes.
start like, well, let me find out for myself,
Yes.
and I think that's like, if people ought to start thinking instead of turning like nations, and we're citizens of the planet Earth, right? And
Yes.
to my mind is like any person on the planet Earth has a right to be on planet Earth. Right?
Yes.
And the mindset is no, like we're in nation states, you only have a right to be in the nation state where you came from, right? And I think
Yes.
that kind of mindset is very limiting. And I think the world would be a
Color
lot
outside of the
better off
lines.
if we were actually, you know, we're a citizen of the planet, and if this person could be
Yes.
actually might add a lot of value if they take it from point A to point B, but you're putting all these restrictions that don't make any sense, right? If they're allowed to
Yes.
actually go where they need to be, they actually are going to
Yes.
probably fill a need, but you're artificially restricting that commerce. And all these people
Yes.
talk about free flow of commerce and capitalism, and then they restrict the flow of human our human selves. So they should think about that.
His travel expanded my mind. I was surprised. I didn't get my passport until I was 30. Something I was really surprised about when I went to Japan is babies are getting passports, and the process of getting a passport for my son and how it had, every few years getting it renewed and all of that, and the visa process and what it actually feels like to be somewhere on a visa. And so when you hear about immigrant crime, I don't put a foot wrong. I am so like the visa hustle is real, the visa
Yeah, for real.
struggle is real. I have
Yeah.
permanent residency and I'm like I read the laws on a regular basis to make sure that I can still have my permanent residency. I pay all my taxes. I pay all like the Japanese equivalent of Social Security. I am on the good foot for real. I don't want to have a moving violation and I don't want to get a traffic ticket.
Well, yeah, I love being in Japan. I would if I had been able to get where you are with a permanent resident, I would. I mean, when I was just there on my work visa, I was just
Yeah.
so happy to be there. I wasn't gonna do anything that was
Yes.
gonna wreck that, and
Yes.
I think when you put yourself into that expat scenario, then I think you can understand how immigrants
Yes.
are, right? Because you're an immigrant, right? And so that
Yes.
I think when people don't put themselves in the other people's shoes, sometimes it's good to take that step.
And 10 years for permanent residency or the equivalent in the US, the green card, 10 years is a long time. 10
Mhm.
years is a long time to have to be perfect. And
Yeah,
I think
that's
people
a lot of
do
work.
not understand the amount of stress that immigrants are under. And so, no, they are not going to be breaking the law. They are not going to be causing crime.
Well, yeah,
Does it
when they run
happen?
yeah, it happens, but when you run the numbers, the native folks usually are the ones committing the crimes compared to
Yeah.
the immigrants, right? But that's not the narrative you want that you see on the TikTok, on the Twitter,
Yeah.
on X, whatever. That's not what that does it because it's not helpful. Like the problem
Yeah.
is the facts aren't helpful. So
Well, and I
so
think too, people don't realize that as an immigrant, if you get arrested and you have to do prison time, you have to serve your prison sentence and then you're deported afterwards.
yeah,
And I think people don't realize that it's not oh, I broke a crime, I broke the law, I get to just go back to my country, I'm just deported. No,
you have to serve
no.
time.
And then you're banned. And that ban goes internationally because of the international treaties. So if you commit a crime in the United States, you can't go to other countries. It limits your
It limits their
mobility
capability, yeah. I mean, it like
everywhere as an immigrant, right? And so I feel like I really wish that there was a way for everybody to spend some time and just do a summer abroad somewhere, right? And I know it's a pie in the sky. I wish that there was a way for the social structure to be like, hey, we value just even if you're visiting the city, the country next door, And I find like because you were in Tokyo, I'm in Nagoya, which is on the lower side of it. It's about 2 hours by Shinkansen,
mhm,
the bullet train
mhm,
to
yeah,
get there. And
yeah.
I find just visiting, like before I came here to Melbourne, I was in Biwa Lake, which is about a 30-minute train ride from my house. And it is a completely different vibe. It's so peaceful. Everyone's so chill. Nagoya, very industrial. Everybody's intense. Tokyo, everybody's moving. Everybody's
Yeah,
got someplace to go
yeah,
and they need to be there yesterday. And then
yeah.
I come here in Melbourne and the part of Melbourne that I'm in, super chill because it's the restaurant district
Oh,
and
so it's like a
everybody's super friendly and super helpful and
different vibe.
y-
Every place has a
right?
vibe, yeah. It's
Yeah,
that's what's good about, I think that's where, it's very important to actually experience the world. And there are ways
yeah,
to do it. Like a lot of people don't even like I was in a big Fortune 500 company and they had people that do you want to go to Tokyo? And there are people
yeah,
oh, I can't do that because like I won't be able to go on the golf course. I won't be able to do this. I won't be able to do that. I'm like,
yeah.
like they don't have golf courses in Tokyo. So it's like you give yourself reasons why you can't do things, but then there's like what
Yes,
about the adventure of it? And you
yes,
just have everybody's got that mindset, but just to think
yes,
about like why can't you do something? Like really start to explore Why? Because they are people that
Yes.
stay in the same job for 25 years, and then the other people that say, I can't do that. I gotta go somewhere else. I gotta be somewhere else.
I
I
mean,
gotta
it's down to, like, trusting yourself, right? Trusting that you're gonna be okay, trusting that you know how to navigate the world a little bit, right? And if you get lost, I found some of the coolest things that I've ever seen in my life getting lost, and
Yeah, it's actually cool.
happy accidents and, being open and walking down a street to see what's down and trusting yourself. And I think people don't embrace how safe the world actually is. I think we're just so focused on how
Well,
dangerous
safety.
everybody
Yeah, well,
is, how
safety
much we
stops you
can't
from a
trust
lot.
people.
There's all these things about safety, like your sense of
Yeah,
safety. A lot of times it's because you think the wolf's at the door and it's not the wolf, right? It's
yeah,
just like you have a general sense of fear because you don't know
yeah,
about something you've never experienced, but that doesn't mean you should fear it. You should maybe like not that sometimes it's going to be hard. Somebody's going to be different.
yeah,
You put yourself
yeah,
into a different culture, you don't know the language, you're going to be maybe not on top of everything, and that kind of that messes up your sense of security because you don't know what's going on, what people are saying around you. And if
yes,
that's like, oh, I can't be in that because that's scary. But you have to like,
yes,
why are you scared of that? Why not
yes,
look at it as the flip side? It's an opportunity. Like
yes,
when you make the mistake in music, you hit the wrong chord. Do you stop the song or do you evolve the song and figure out how to get to the next thing? Right. And it's an adventure.
exactly.
You have no idea where you're going. It will just happen. And you gotta trust that it will work out. Well, that's an adventure.
I tell everybody the first person you have to open your heart to is yourself, right? Let go of the shame and embarrassment because I think that's what people fear the most, right? Is being ashamed or embarrassed or caught out. And I feel like, but if you're being you, you're being real, you can never be caught out. And there's nothing to ever be ashamed of. And so, like, making that, having a discordant moment in music and exploring that and letting yourself run, letting yourself rip and run and have fun, that's about knowing that there's no shame in trying. If someone
Yeah.
tries, you've done the bravest, boldest thing you can do. If you tried to do something. And I want people to celebrate that. If you tried to get to know somebody, if you tried to go someplace new, doesn't matter if you got there. The fact that you tried, you got a little bit further than you would have been if you didn't try at all. And that the walls that you keep talking about are so important for people to realize the first wall they have to let down is the wall between loving themselves and knowing themselves versus the lies that they put in place to protect themselves. You know,
Mhm.
be real about who you are, what you love, what your values are. And then it's so much easier to get with other people and just listen and be present and see what they have to offer. And you find out we're not that scary, you know? Like
Yeah.
us as human beings, we're not that scary. And most people want what's good for what want social good, right? They want what's best for the world. They want what's best for their family. And trust yourself, you'll trust other people.
Yeah. I think it's like if you stop thinking like that other person is the wolf, that
Yeah,
other person is actually gonna lead you to an opportunity. Like you were able to go horse bike riding when you met somebody you didn't even know.
yeah,
Like all these opportunities when you meet somebody, you learn something. You learn about new food, new words, new
yes,
ideas, new things that you end up getting into things it's like and you
yeah,
end up like those end up being the best moments of your life.
yeah,
Instead of just sitting there eating the Wonder Bread day after day
yeah.
after day after day. It's like, I don't think I want to be on the Wonder Bread every day.
So I just tell people just go down the spice aisle in the store and pick out a spice you've never tried before. Put it on something. Even if you don't like it, you learn something new about yourself. So I like to do just random spice grabs at least once a week at the grocery store. I just pick up random spices and I educate myself about where did this
Or,
spice come from? You know? What is this spice
she's
used
very
for?
adventurous. Yeah, she's super. My daughter's like 25, and she's at home doing like work from like a home school thing because she has some like medical issues. But she is constantly finding recipes, and she loves to cook. and she has
Nice.
like a hydroponic garden. She's always trying new
Oh,
and
nice.
creating new, actually growing new things, trying new recipes, and she's always cooking dinner and making these really interesting dishes from around the world. She gets like really into it, and I just find it like her generation, well, at least the people in her generation that she hangs out with are very adventurous in terms of like where they go, what they talk about, what they're willing to
Yes.
address. And I learned from my daughter because she's in that new generation of 20 something that is willing to do that more than my
Yes.
father or my grandfather were ever to willing to do.
So my grandfather told me I couldn't move to Japan, like forbid it. So I didn't actually move until my grandfather passed 'cause I was very close. But I thought, this is the same man that moved across the United States, moved from one coast to the other. It says I can't move to Japan, but right on, whatever. And then I have a son, he's 30. And I look at my son, and one of the coolest things that my son has ever said to me was, "Thank you for showing me the world and making me confident enough to be in it." And I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, that's the kind of compliment, like as a parent you dream of hearing, right? Thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah,
giving me
that's
freedom."
awesome.
I think it's a beautiful thing, the lessons that you passed on, right? And the openness to receive your daughter and not scold and not make her small, not try to box her in, like letting her have the garden, supporting that, tasting the food when she cooks it. My son loves to cook, and sometimes I'm fortunate enough that we're still close enough, even though he's out in the world on his own, living by himself, he comes over to my house and he's like, got groceries. I'm gonna cook. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna eat. And we just, sit there, we laugh, we talk, we cook, we put on music. We love music in our family, and we're very passionate about listening and having a good time. There's nothing better than like getting in the kitchen and cooking together
Yeah,
and
cooking is a big.
bringing in spices and all of that, right? And being introduced to new flavors
It's so creative. I
and new
I I I
foods.
love like, I think cooking is just as creative as music or any kind of art,
Yeah.
and, but it's just amazing to talk to you. It's always like, I always find time goes by so quickly on this show, and we
It
already hit,
does.
like, our time, but I wanted to mention your URL, the adjustmentguidance.com, and, like, let people know, like, if people click on that, is that how they connect with you?
Yeah, so they can go to adjustmentguidance.com, and I have a blog. I also have, um, I love Meta, Facebook, but it's decided that I need to be adjustment guidance there, and I also need to be adjustment guidance Nagoya therapy practice. So they can find me on Facebook, and then I'm just Christopher on Twitter. I'm on there every now and then. If you want to see my spicier side, that's what you'll find on Twitter. That's not me being a therapist. That's just me being Christopher. If you want to connect more with my therapy side of things, you can go to my website or check out my blog on Facebook. The blog is also on the website. And find me on podcasts. Support your local podcaster.
Thank you.
If you know someone that's podcasting, share a link, do the right thing. Let's help get this out there and spread it out to the masses. I love what you're doing, and I hope everybody supports it. I hope they check out your other episodes. I'm a huge fan of the work that you're doing. I like when you talk just to musicians as well as other people in the mental health. You always have good, interesting conversations. Please, if you listen to this one, you liked what we talked about, go check out other episodes. It will
Well, thank
not be
you.
time wasted. Be time well
I
spent, I promise.
I do appreciate that. That is, that's a great. I really thank you for that. They are really. I don't know what to say about it, but I thank you very much again
Thanks
because,
for having me. This is a great conversation. It was just a really great time. Anybody who's thinking about being a guest, I think they should reach out to you. It's just so welcoming. It's a wonderful experience. Thank you so much for the experience.
well, thank you again for being a guest on the Family Like a Ghost podcast. We were just live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We will be on all the other podcast platforms where you can listen to or watch a podcast by later today. And thank you again for being a guest on the Family Like a Ghost podcast, and have a great time in Australia and when you're back in Japan. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I hope you have some good food. Tell your daughter to keep the faith, keep creating.
She's cooking something good today. I can smell it already. Bye.
Thank you.